All right, our second little interactive homework. Let's put some data into our table. If you remember, we had over here in the first one, we had a couple names. I'm going to use slightly different names in this, but we're going to put some data so we actually have, yes, data in our table, not just an empty table. So let's see how we do that. The interactive or inserting data, we say insert into the name of the table. We optionally have a list of columns that we can put which columns we want to insert into, because we can't have columns that have no data in it, and then we have a set of values. This is a list of values. You notice that each one of the entries is separated by a comma. So if we get down here, now remember I said that the insert into is the values, or you don't have to list out what the columns are in between name and the values. That would go right there. You can leave that empty. Now if you do that, what happens is that it's going to use all of the columns in the table and expect you to fill in every one of them. And one of those things in the database is you can change your table, you can change the order of those columns, and if you don't list out your columns when you're doing this, yes, you do save a little bit of typing in the beginning, but what happens in 6 months if, we add a new column to the table, or we rename a column in the table, or we just reload from a backup, and for some reason when we do the backup, it changes the order of those columns? Your insert statement is going to be broken. So you should be aware of that. Now down here, you notice I've done the insert the first time, okay, with this data. You only need to do this once in this exercise, but I've repeated the same thing, but I've listed out the actual column names that I'm going to insert into. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and run that insert. You don't have to have more than one row of data. You can just insert a single value. That's what I do here, is just a single value with a semicolon at the end. Remember the semicolon at the end. And let's actually just run this, and then let's see that we got the right result. And the check for the right result is that we have 6 rows in the table. So it's pretty easy and straightforward. Now, one of those things is that I've neatly lined it up in the example and put in spaces so that it's more readable. I would certainly do that if I were putting this in code, but here I'm just going to type it in. And also, in the it's important that you put in Bob true all lower and actually match the case, because that's going to be in a future interactive assignment. So and now let's run this first piece and see if we got it correct. And it says that we inserted 5 rows and that worked. Let's go back and insert this other one that we have right here, whoever this is. And I'll just edit the previous one and put in and we'll run this one. And we inserted 1 row this time. And this time, now let's run this select right here. And the grading is based on you just having 6 rows. So if you ended up with 6 rows, 5 plus 1, you're going to get the points for this. And I actually put that on 1 line. You don't have to split stuff up on multiple lines when you enter it. It just makes it more readable for us humans. But yes, there is 6 lines there. And yes, I graded it and I got the 10 points out of 10 because that's the correct number of lines. Correct number of rows, I guess I want to call it, since we are talking about a database. Data is set up in terms of columns, which is what's named, and rows, which is how many of those you have. And it is structured and typed. So this is what we get in a database. That's the insert, and let's move on to the next one where we actually, I think, are going to do some fixes and start updating the data. Now, you'll notice that in this one, I've actually done a select. That's how you get data back from the database, but we're going to cover that in a lot more detail as we go through.